looks a little different today. There are still 3 of us, but there's a little bit of a change this week.
Oh, an intimidating change. Play dead.
All right, we're going to do a drum roll. I can't do a drum roll. And our guest is Jesse Rothacher, the one and only chameleon.
Yeah.
Many things, but that's my newest reptile name is chameleon.
I have never heard of another. I believe you are the one and only.
Yeah, that's true. What year is that song from, the chameleon song?
Is it 80s?
Yeah, it goes back.
I think it might be 80s. Yeah. But all right. Well, welcome to the Folkland podcast once again. New faces here since the last time that you've been on.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. But we wanted to, invite you on. Our girl Jen just needed a little bit of a break there, She went to go pet a couple penguins, and they got a little rowdy. They went postal on her, so she needs a little time to recover.
She was having a bad work experience on the show. She said that even though, I don't know how this works, she said, even though you guys do this as volunteers, somehow she was getting paid the least. I didn't. And so anyway, she tried to take her complaints to HR, and she hasn't been able to find one yet.
Yeah, we always say that's breakfast. He's our next level up.
Yeah.
Over at his house, I guess.
I guess we have to tell her that since he's in charge, he comes to you.
Yeah. He finds you when he finds you.
She's out looking for breakfast is what she's doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we had our lunch together, we sent him the bill.
Yeah.
Staff development, we called it. Shall we kick this baby off with a little rundown?
Let's do it.
All right. We all went postal this week on episode 132 of Nateland, titled Mail. Before the carrier pigeons took flight, we took a stroll through Dusty's family forest, where there were Michigan T-shirts aplenty. Aaron's best friends growing up were his janitor and Martin Short. They probably kicked it with Taylor Swift. Brian has yet to be invited to a personal Panguin experience in Chattanooga, despite 3 recent visits. Yet Nate is in so thick with the penguins, he's having them made into coats. Pony Express, mailing children, Greg Gumbel, a box of venomous snake monsters. Let's send our trash to outer space, and stamps are going up to 67 cents this week, if you can believe it.
Oh, wait. Is he just sitting next to you right now?
There's a couple of them here, yeah.
Okay, show them again.
The Gila monsters from the email are here. So
the famous ones.
We can meet them a little bit more later, but yeah, they're both sitting right here.
Oh my God!
I don't want to interrupt your flow. I just want to let the listeners know, if they stay tuned, they're going to be meeting the Gila monsters from the show today.
We don't want to interrupt their venom flow.
Yeah, yeah, they actually slowly chew in their venom. It's less of a flow and more of a slow chew.
Okay,
that's really frightening.
Yeah. Yeah. So this week on Nateland, the most exciting topic of mail was brought up, but there was a lot, like an hour's worth of show before we ever talked about mail.
Yeah, it looked like it was about a half hour of mail and about an hour and a half of Nateland, which
that's pretty accurate.
That's a pretty good mix.
Yeah.
Good stuff. First off, Nate made the comment about his shows being that the new material is coming as it comes, as is the process of a comedian. And if you need a little bit more details about that, you can go to the Facebook group where Abigail wrote a nice lengthy paragraph, folks.
Yeah. I'm glad that I was trying to follow along how he was trying to explain it, but I think if I didn't see the post, I would be a little confused what he was trying to say. But I think he was just trying to, he never wants anybody to not know what's going on. And I think
Yeah.
that's very kind of him to do.
Yeah.
I think
He's got a great heart.
I think the challenge that comedians have is if you're a musician, you go out there and you play your greatest hits and everyone loves it. And you do one or two new songs and that's good enough. And everyone feels like they get their money's worth. But if you're a comedian, you go out there, everyone expects new material. But I actually think, like, if Nate was listening, I would tell him, like, you're not completely right about that, Nate. Like, I know that's the assumption that everyone wants to hear new material, and that's what he's going on. And he's, like, out of the integrity of his heart, he doesn't want people to be overpromised new material and find he still has some stuff he's working on we may have heard before in the last 6 months. But, like, I went to a Gaffigan show one time, and he did mostly new material, and then all of a sudden he started pulling out his
Hot Pockets.
The Hot Pockets was a big one. He pulled out
That's
Hot
big
Pockets, and the place went wild. You know,
Yeah.
just like you're at a concert and they start playing Free Bird or something like that. And so I do think he could rest a little bit knowing that some of his classics, like if he would, let's say in Nashville or something, he does all his new material that he's so proud of, but he wants to just pull out a couple of his classics, like Olivia or
Like
I don't
a
know
Dead
what are
Horse.
some of his classics. Comment in the comments. What are some of the classics you guys would love to hear Nate do when you come out to hear his new material that you would just be blown away with? Because when Gaffigan, he did the throwback to Hot Pockets. I'm just telling you, the whole arena went nuts. So I think they should do both. I think they should have new and throw out some of those fan favorites.
Yeah, that's fun because I know they feel the pressure because they're not musicians to always have new stuff. But I agree because he's so seasoned and all his others, his first jokes are so beloved. Yeah, if he wanted to bring some back, in certain moments, he could totally do that. And he's such a perfectionist, I think, in his work, which is obviously very admirable. But yeah, we love a good dead horse.
Good old Starbucks humor.
Yeah,
so I think he's also such a classic comedian that he's thinking in the paradigm of this is the way comedy has always worked. But I think you can get guys that come along that just blow the doors off of things or the wheels off of things. I'm not sure what there'd be more of, but just blow it off and re-engineer it and make his own rules. I think if anyone could do it, Nate could sure do it. Because
I agree. Yeah, he's pretty great. He's pretty great at what he does. He's the best in the biz, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm excited to say one thing here about Folkland, and that is this week, our comment section worked. We had a little tech issue last week on YouTube, but this week we worked. It worked. And we got a couple of fun comments this week. You want to hit those up, Jacy?
Yeah, sure. Well, I just wanted to reiterate, if the comments aren't working or something's not working, we're not trying to punish the folks. It's literally techie stuff. So if you posted a comment and then you don't see it, it's not like we hate it. It's all YouTube and out of our hands. So,
unless you're threatening a revolution, we might have to take that down at least to review it.
Right. I agree. So Jeremy Rieger, I think it's Rieger or Reger. It's Reger.
My custodian growing up was named Reger, and that's exactly
your personal custodian at your house.
He's actually right over there. Hey, Mr. Reger, I'd like another bubbly. Sorry, go ahead.
What a good guy.
He is. I love Senor Reger.
So Jeremy says, I literally cannot believe I'm watching a podcast about a podcast, but you guys are amazing. And to which I replied, try explaining to people what your podcast is about. But I know, a podcast about a podcast, but that's the fun of it. And of course, good old Rusty Green, Rusty's Journey, said a very sweet thing about Brandi. He said, Brandi, don't worry if you're funny enough, you are. However, the best quality one can ask for while doing a pod is communication. You certainly do that well. The funny always comes. On a side note, thanks for the shout out, Jacy. I did toast the screen when you mentioned it, and then I realized that your show is also pre-recorded. Jen looked good on the left, but please stop shifting the order of you guys on the screen. I just got your names down, and now I have to learn them all over again. Great episode. Have a blessed day.
We have no control over where we land on the screen. Sorry, Rusty. I suppose my costumes don't help either, right? I mean, Jen is dressed up like Jesse today. It's very confusing.
What happens is Brandi actually spends a lot of time, instead of rearranging the way the cameras are supposed to be, she spends a lot of time editing the comments. So, less time suppressing your First Amendment rights, then maybe she could get the technical aspects correct. We have, you guys probably don't know this if you're listening at home. We are in a giant studio right now, and it takes a crew of about 4 people to produce the show. So what we would like to say as the on-screen talent is, if it's anyone's fault which order the screens show up in, it is not ours as the on-screen talent. It's our dozens and dozens of full-time workers that make this show possible behind the scenes. We like to blame them.
Yeah,
the postal
exactly.
workers, as we like to call them.
Yeah,
I mean, what are they doing? I mean, yeah.
And if it's not their fault, it's my custodian Rager's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does his best.
Oh my goodness. So, okay, quickly, Aaron meeting Greg Gumbel. They talked about that before the comments, right? And he does look a lot younger than Aaron. And I haven't seen him in a long time, but I do recognize that name and his face from like when I was a kid, I think. So it's just mind-boggling.
Gumbel, JC, his brother is Brian Gumbel.
Yes, but I have heard of his name too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, Bryant was on the Today Show, and Greg was more into sports.
Okay.
Broadcasting.
That's awesome. And Aaron wore the same shirt.
The Gumbel part sounded familiar, but I actually was thrown off by the first name.
That's why. I like to imagine in the Gumbel household growing up, boys, you can do it. One day you can broadcast to the masses.
I like to think that their minivan that they rode in to church when they were kids was called the Gumball Machine.
I hope so.
I like that.
Not, they could call one of the cars that.
I'm telling you right now, if it wasn't called that, I don't want to know.
Yeah. Don't spoil the fun.
It's just funny. They posted the picture of Aaron and Greg, and then he had the same shirt on, and he's sitting there behind the microphone, and he goes, he didn't even realize he did that.
What's ironic about that is it's Dusty who only owns the one shirt.
Why they did that? They've commented before when it comes to clothes and stuff, how as comedians, they are so afraid to do anything out of the ordinary, because when you're around other comedians, they can just roast on anything.
Yeah.
And when I say so afraid, they're not afraid. Like it's all when a comedian roasts you, it's like the highest compliment. They wouldn't do it if they didn't like
a badge of honor.
Right, exactly. But when they were noticing he wore the same shirt, I'm sure he was like, "Oh, I can't believe I let that one get by," because he's got to know they're going to catch that.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty cool. All right, so they had some pretty stellar comments on the pod this week, actually. There were a lot of really, really great ones, in fact. So one that they started off was about airport luggage and about how this person wrote in about their uncle taking the wrong bag from the airport and then keeping it for the whole visit wherever he was.
Who does it?
Oh my gosh.
Well, just knowing that you have an extra bag and then you're just kind of like, I'll deal with it later. I mean,
I love how comedians reverse engineer everything. I think it was Dusty who reverse engineered that scenario and said, how do you pack one bag and then you're at the belt and you grab it and you get a second bag?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Or did he have a second bag that he left there?
Yeah.
And you wonder if there's more to that story. Or sometimes there's not. Sometimes you just have relatives that just do these wacky things. Like we were just talking about a memory of my pop-up growing up. We were at a Mexican restaurant and they did, I guess, the traditional thing of they asked him what my grandmother would be drinking, and my pop-up, I don't think he understood it, or it didn't, you don't usually ask the husband, like, what's your wife drinking? And so he was just joking with them and said, it's her birthday, give her whatever she wants. But he just said it as like a comment. He didn't know how to answer it. And then we're halfway through the meal, and they put a sombrero on my granny's head, and they start singing Feliz Cumpleaños because they thought it was actually her birthday. So sometimes you just have these relatives that just do these off-the-wall things, and then there's these ripple effects, and you don't even know where it started.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
That's hilarious. I love that.
Well, I'll go ahead, and this was maybe my favorite zinger of the week from Brian, took place during that story.
Yeah.
And Nate really sat in that for the longest time, thinking about how this man had this bag and how he chose to keep it for these days, knowing that somebody else's weekend was wrecked. And so Nate says, I don't think I could have done it. And without missing a beat, Brian says, well, you shouldn't.
It's that father figure of Brian coming in to Nate as like his older brother, being like, no, little bro, you shouldn't.
Yeah. And you shouldn't try to figure out.
Yeah.
Good stuff. There was another luggage story that was shared, and it was just pitiful about this young college kid getting his luggage run over by the plane and completely destroyed.
I just thought, I want to see the camera footage of that moment. I just don't understand. Like, it explodes. Does it pop? The pressure on that one little piece of luggage must have been insane.
It sounded like it came straight out of a John Hughes movie to me. I was definitely thinking trains, planes, and automobiles all the way. And then Nate said it, and I was like, yes. And then he said pure luck, which I was like, I have not seen.
I think I have seen it. I think it's a 1991 film. And I think Danny Glover has to go solve like a mystery in Mexico or something. But somehow it involves Martin Short, who has all this bad luck happening to him. And so somehow they have to work together, I think, to find their boss's daughter or something. It is a pretty funny movie. I've seen it, and I went to go watch it again since they referenced it. And it was on Amazon. You have to pay to rent it. And, a lot of people think the reptile rescue business is very lucrative. I'm just not renting every 1991 short film that I see.
Right, especially those that are only like 5.3 on the ratings.
I know. Yeah, I think they're Rotten Tomatoes.
Steve Martin was in it, maybe. They're a pretty good duo. So
I know. Martin Short is definitely hilarious, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What I wish we could have heard was for that kid who got the $100 for his entire bag. I would have loved to hear him explain that story to his parents when he got home. Yeah. It would have been kind of akin to me, like the guy who sold his cow for magic beans, and he had to come home and tell his wife or his mom or whatever, like, oh, well, I don't have the cow, but I got these 5 beans here. And, because I'll bet you it wasn't even his luggage, because he said he was a kid at the time. So I'll bet it was like mom and dad's luggage.
Like he borrowed their suitcase or something.
Everything that he brought. And they're probably like, you got $100 for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they probably threw it out the window like the magic beans.
But on the bright side, as a mother, she didn't have to wash his laundry. Ba-dum-ba.
That's true.
That is a good point.
Maybe she was responsible. She may have lit the match.
Oh, oh gosh. I don't know if I would go near my teenage son's laundry with a match. It's hard telling. It might go up in flames. I don't know.
Be cautious.
Yeah. Always cautious. Another comment that came from the comma chameleon himself, which was a great story. I loved it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So the story was that when we need to use airlines to ship live reptiles, I don't like doing it because the airlines are very bad at it. And so we had these venomous Gila monsters that were being shipped from California to us here in Pennsylvania. And whenever we ship these reptiles, I always call the 800 numbers try to find out what are the latest guidelines, because it's not something we do every day, but maybe we have to do it every year or something like that. And so I try to figure out what are the guidelines. The person on the 800 number, they never know. And then they try to read me something. It's sort of like the person that from Delta, I think, that didn't know if Nate was Nathaniel or Nathan. And
Joseph Bart.
Yeah, it was the Bart guy. And it was Joseph Bart. And these are the people that we have to deal with when we're shipping live reptiles. And so then what happens is you get to the airport, and the workers at the airport, they act like you're pranking them. Like they're looking around for Ashton Kutcher. They think that he's about to pop out and be like, oh, no, you don't really have to ship alligators. It was a joke. So anyway, in this case, we weren't shipping them. All we had to do was receive them. So I go to the airport and I check in, and I'm saying, hey, I'm supposed to pick up these live Gila monsters. And they're all looking at me like, what are you talking about? And so they point me to some customer service thing. And there in the corner next to everyone else's lost luggage, probably the luggage that the uncle brought back and the
my gosh,
burned alive and stuff. And that's where my crate of Gila monsters was. And this is the actual lid. I think you guys may have seen this from the YouTube. Delta, I believe it was Delta, whoever it was. I think the Delta logo's on there. So we'll throw them under the bus a while. So they just put a live animal sticker on it. And you can see on that sticker, there's no emblem for Gila monsters. So they crossed all of them out and wrote snakes. And the shipper had actually written on the top venomous Gila monsters, but I think the guys dissected it correctly.
I loved what they said. I thought it was great.
I think they're exactly right. They're probably like, oh, no one knows what a Gila monster is. We'll just call it snakes. And that should keep people from opening it.
Yeah, I wrote it down actually. Dusty says people aren't going to open it up if it says snakes. And Aaron said, but if it says venomous monsters, people are probably like, I'll take a little look. What's going on in here?
Yeah, it's probably exactly true.
They are cute.
I'm going to pet it.
Yeah, go ahead and pet that guy. Just careful.
Rude.
They do bite, and they do have significant venom. Their venom is unlikely to kill a person, but it will.
The penguin.
It seriously would.
He's looking at you like you're food.
Their venom is more defensive actually than it is for hunting, because they end up eating things like quail eggs and mice and stuff like that, and they have powerful jaw pressure. So even if they didn't have venom, just like a lizard without venom, they'd be able to take their food down. But their venom, even though it won't kill you, you will wish you were dead. It's supposed to be one of the most painful bites in the entire world. But
does this Gila monster have a name?
Yeah, this is Chester here.
Hey, Chester.
Rosie's over here. It looks like I'm casually holding them, but I'm actually staying their bite radius. So there's Chester and Rosie, and I think Rosie is the one who is at Brian's virtual baby shower.
Ah.
Wow, look at those nails. My 10-year-old was so excited when I told the story of the Gila monsters this afternoon before we started recording, and I was telling, my family that you were going to be on. He was like, oh, I know all about those. I saw it in the Wildcrats.
Yeah.
Great show.
And he thought it was so funny.
Wildcrats is so good, and their information is actually accurate. There's a lot of shows that are out there that it just like teaches backwards things, or they do unethical things to produce the shows. But not like any shows.
You learn so much on this podcast.
As a person who has been known to call herself an artist before, I know that's controversial, but when those children's shows teach the rainbow and they leave out indigo, I feel the same way.
Yeah, indigo is a kind of snake, actually. So the longest snake in North America is the
because of its dark blue hue.
Wow,
indigo.
That's true. That is exactly why. Wow, you are smart.
Goodness.
I told you.
The one thing that I really liked about when they talked about the Gila monster thing, so Nate called them Gila monster, which is what a lot of people do because they're spelled Gila, but people just don't know. It's the word, the Gila word is the Spanish pronunciation because they're found on both sides of the Mexico border. So,
cool.
So they're pronounced Gila, and I thought it was really cool because that same thing had come up on the Arizona episode where they called it Gila monsters, and a bunch of commenters wrote in and said, no, it's not. And then and then the following week, Bates corrected it on the show and said, actually, everyone told me it's pronounced Gila. And so then when Nate called it Gila as he read the email this week, Bates was all over it. And I thought, wow, we learned something today.
Well, he looked so proud.
When you first, or when they first talked about the Gila monster and they called it Gila, I just want to earn like a little virtual gold star because I knew they were wrong on that one.
Good job on that.
Probably from Wildcrats being on at my house. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Great show, though, and I tell that to parents all the time because there are some shows out there that are, well, we'll just say they're not all created equally.
Yeah. No, kind of like this show.
We have,
goodness.
Let's see here.
Fire the Peasants.
Yeah, that was great.
I wasn't sure when they were talking about that part. I wasn't sure, like, where is this going? Like, I couldn't believe, like, just the progression of that part of the story of the pheasants to test the jet engines and having to humanely kill them, but then being frozen and then they thaw them out. I was like, these are so many steps and I'm kind of getting uncomfortable.
To me, Brandi, did that sound weird to you? Because to me, as someone who works in animals, that sounded like the exact procedure that I would expect.
I'm sorry. I was actually trying to pull up a little segment here. Repeat the question, please.
I'm sorry. Brandi pulled a Dusty and tuned out for 5 minutes. So
I was going to wait until we talked about college football, but I couldn't. Sorry.
Well, we were talking about when the person wrote in and said they tested the jet engines by raising pheasants, and they raise them in a uniform standard, and then they knock them out however they do it humanely. They freeze them, they unfreeze them, and then they chuck the pheasants into the jet
engines.
Did that shock you when they were going through that process? Because I was just saying, as an animal person, those are the exact kind of procedures I would expect. Working in the zoos and working with different animal organizations.
I don't know.
We have to deal with a lot of this.
I don't know if I felt shock or not.
But I thought that made a ton of sense because actually, isn't that what took the plane down in the Hudson River in New York City?
Yeah, Sully. Back to the old Hankster. You earned 50 bonus points for bringing him up again.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that it checks out with you, that procedure. Obviously, I know nothing about that. I do agree that it probably is necessary to have some sort of process like that to make sure everything is kosher, with these big machines when they're up in the air.
I don't know if they could eat the actual ducks. I don't know if they've been blessed by a rabbi. So I'm not sure if the situation is kosher, but I'm just saying that they raise the pheasants in such a way that they could be uniformly turned into a jet.
Okay, that makes sense.
So Ben Shapiro's family might not eat them, though. I don't know if they have gone through the whole kosher process.
We have not had him on as a guest yet.
Oh man, keep working at it. So.
Yeah, well, we've hinted at some high profile guests, this year. So you never know what you're gonna get. I will say that.
To give you an idea, the way that that a lot of the reptile food that we feed here, we would do something very similar. Where in the same way they talk about freezing the pheasants, all of our reptile food comes out of the freezer. And the way that where most of our reptile food comes from is it's raised in a very uniform standard in the way they describe for the pheasants. They have to be farm raised at a very uniform standard because they're trying to they're trying to collect data, and they don't want to have these obscure data points because things are raised differently. And so it's going to be very standard for the scientific trials. And the same way our food is raised that way, because our food gets raised that they knock all the rodents out humanely, the same kind of idea, at the same size, and then they just take a little plasma sample, a little blood sample from the neck of the rodents that we use, and they use those blood samples or plasma samples for whatever lab studies they're doing. But then the remaining part of the rodents is waste as far as they're concerned, and so then they will sell them to animal organizations at a discount. So for me as an animal person, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's exactly what they would do. But my favorite part is when Nate was, oh man, I don't know what this show would be without Nate, because as much as I love every single one of those guys, but he constantly is just so funny to me. And when he talks about, he thought the pheasants were being thrown in there live to see like if they could get through the plane. He like one would be like do like
like a video game.
In there.
Duck hunt.
A cartoon duck or something doing exactly that.
Yeah.
So there again, like I said, those were some good comments, and there were a lot of good ones this week. And we want to thank you for sharing that like insider story for us. One thing that we haven't done though here this week is share our review from ETP from last week. Do we want to hear it?
I love hearing Eric.
Definitely.
Are you ready? What did I do?
Play.
Hello, folks. Sorry I can't be with you tonight.
Hey, Jen, let's pretend you're with us.
The ladies have told you I'm doing, but I'm in jail. And prison. 26.
It's a very comfortable pillow in jail.
Thanks, Jen, classing it up right out the gate. Apparently we have full spectrum audio with a bunch of stars, which we love. Jacy and her son. An ETP moment leads to another episode of Jesse Land, Boo Daddy stuff, and what's all this about? Bugs? Robots and problems. Brian States' Jacamac Park, 30 miles southeast of Terre Haute, known for fishing. There's a sensor button, and it wasn't used during my prison story. Ashtray, thumb holes. Epiphanies. Epiphanies sound expensive? That sounds like tongue twister. Throbbing legs, again, absent. Sensor button. Nice paintings, Brandi and JW. Jacy. Nice Jim and Pam over your shoulder, Brandi. Nice how to get into comedy picture. We'll see in we'll later see in your computer files. Good night. Okay. And you really should fold that pile of clothes in the bed. Unsightly. It's fine. Boys mentions inspires singing very softly. Are you ladies artists? Well, golly! The Blair Twitch thinks so. My bandmate pronounces collars the same way the rest of us pronounce collars. Dr. Bluebonnet, folk art, and Jen is visibly bored. Sorry, folks. Unlike during travels with B-Dog, who didn't show. Followed by the statue. Another fun one. How do y'all do it? Golly. Goodbye, folks.
Thanks, Jen.
I hope
Thanks
Jen
for sending
gets
that
out of
in.
jail very soon, and I hope it's a lesson to everyone. Don't hide classified documents next to your Corvette in the garage like Jen did, and hopefully you guys will not end up in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
It's true. We can all learn a little something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So getting on with our episode. Did you guys notice how they brought up Lucille Ball's statue like we hadn't already covered that last week on Folkland?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was rough, but
My
I'm glad they fixed it.
My 12-year-old was just complaining about a kid at school today that will if my 12-year-old Kenny says a joke and not everyone hears it, there's this other kid that will repeat the joke and take credit for it. And I feel like that's what the guys did to you, that you brought up Lucille Ball and then here they go claiming it.
Well, that's a very sincere form of flattery, really.
Yeah.
A positive spin on it.
Definitely.
So, did you guys know that Dusty goes to the post office like all the time?
I did because I listened to his podcast.
I
do too.
Stuff.
The question I wanted to ask Dusty doesn't celebrate traditional holidays. If you listen to his podcast, you learn a lot of pretty interesting things about him. But he mentioned he doesn't celebrate, Christmas and presents and things like that. but he mentioned that he brought chocolate to his postal workers for Christmas. So a question I was hoping to ask him is it like a conflict of his conscience to give Christmas chocolate to the postal workers when he doesn't celebrate Christmas? Anyway, he always has the most interesting explanations. I'm not saying it as a gotcha question. I imagine on the other end of that is a super interesting Dusty explanation, because
For sure.
Oh yeah.
the most fun logic to listen to him explain those.
Oh yeah. He's a very smart guy, that's for sure.
Yeah, listening to Dusty talk about the post office, I was like, I am Dusty in this episode because I also have sold merch and ship that, and my books that I've written, I did a lot of shipping, and I luckily had some really amazing postal workers who helped me. I don't know if it's because they were bored and they had nothing else to do, but they were very kind and taught me what to do. And I think I went on a slow time, Dusty. I think that's really when you should go to ask questions. But I don't think Dusty was asking questions. And then I was able to get some more information about how to print labels at home. And that's actually a little bit cheaper, which is why I'm sure the guy at the post office was trying to actually help Dusty out, printing them at home. And then where I live, thankfully, our mail carrier picks up my mail. If I have actually like a priority box, if I have
Wait a minute.
Group
Hold
of
on.
like, if I have a group of things that I need to ship out, if I have at least one thing that's priority, he will come pick it up at my house. I schedule a pickup.
Hold on. I don't understand.
You can schedule a pickup. You go to the post
have
office
a mail
website.
carrier who comes to your house. Are you rich? Are you the royal family?
I meant to pick up packages.
Does the janitor do it for you?
Well, I
No,
also have a mailbox. So
I live in a reasonably small town, and I live in a reasonably small suburb of this small city. I guess it's a city, not a town, but I live in a suburb of it. And in this little area where I live, there are maybe 2 roads in this little area where they don't deliver mail, and I live on one of them.
That's crazy.
So we have to go to the post office to get our mail, or to, you have to be there at the right day if you have a package coming in that's not UPS or whatever. It's a bit of a thing. You have to sign, you have to prove with a utility bill every year that you live there. Like, you have to go in and re-sign. And
oh gosh. Well,
there's a
God
fun
bless
mail
you.
fact that they didn't bring up that I think people would be interested to find out. Did you know for free you can get an email every morning that scans what mail is going to be in your mailbox?
I just learned that from a friend just recently who was out of town.
So it's like, if you are the kind of person that your mail's right by your front door, you're going to pick it up on the way into your house anyway. But especially if you're out more in the country and you got to walk to, the edge of your driveway or cross a busy road, or some reason you don't check your mail every day, it's kind of handy. We started doing it. Now, the only thing that's annoying, we have a regular mailbox at home, and then we have a P.O. box for the reptile rescue. And I haven't been able to get it set up for the reptile rescue P.O. box, because it would be really nice with a P.O. box to know if there's mail in it or not, or important mail or not.
Snake. I mean, you want to know.
Well, we literally do get live bugs shipped there fairly often. So something like that would be helpful to know what's there. So usually what happens when we get a package, our P.O. box is too small, and we have a very little country post office that we go to with one worker. So we have a little size. That's how you are. Well, we have a very little mailbox that doesn't fit packages. So they put this yellow card in it that says you have a package to pick up. And then I've got to come back whenever the post office is open. And whenever I do, our post office man, James, he either loves it or hates it. I can't tell because he smiles every time. But whenever I get that yellow card in my mailbox, I always come in and start singing the Willy Wonka song. I got the golden ticket. I do it every single time, and he never kicked me out of the post office yet.
Did you have to tip him, though? It's between you and Dusty and your mail carriers.
Well, I gave him egg rolls one time.
All right.
And he said they were he and his wife really enjoyed the egg rolls. We have an egg roll lady that sets up at garage sales sometimes around here. And the one time
I'm
there's a
jealous.
community garage sale right down the block from the post office, everyone gets a bunch of them. Like no one wants to buy your old sweaters and stuff, but the egg roll lady sets up and they take credit cards. I mean, it's
wow, nice.
Ooh, you're giving us a little tip for a side business here.
I'm telling you what, if they have like 4 or 5 people staffing the egg roll lady stand, they have a website and everything. And they're some of the best fresh egg rolls. So anyway, I didn't give them chocolates like Dusty would have, but I did give them egg rolls.
Well, that's a good deal. Mm-hmm. Now, they did a lot of talking about the history of mail and the carrier pigeons in Egypt, and they talked about the Pony Express and how that wasn't really good business, and they talked about mail fraud. I think one of the most off-the-wall Nateland-ish facts they told was about how people used to mail their children.
Yeah.
Can you imagine why is your mail all soggy today? Maybe it's because there was an infant in the bag with it for 40 miles.
Yeah, right. I just can't imagine. I mean, and the pictures were really crazy.
Yeah.
I have seen that before. I do follow a history account on Instagram, and I have seen that picture before of the literal child in the bag. And the guy looks so miserable because he's probably like, I ran out of milk in this bottle and I have no more diapers left. It's like handing it off to a teenage babysitter or something.
But, like if you watch old shows, and when I say old shows, I don't even think this is 100 years ago, but like old movies, like I think the Narnia movies are one that starts out this way. It might be, what's that one with the series of unfortunate events? But there's a lot of these old movies that start out with hard times come on the parents. Whatever reason, the parents have to go to work full time, can't keep their kids, and the kids just get sent away to an aunt.
That is true.
And isn't that how Narnia started? Like
Narnia began, they sent the children to live with their uncle because of the war.
And so that was not. I mean, that wasn't like they put a postage stamp on them.
Yeah,
but it might as well have been.
Yeah,
and I think there was an understanding back then that with our kids, they complain if there's no Wi-Fi. But back then, it was like, you might not live. You might not grow up to be an adult. Like, life was hard. So the idea that you're going to get a stamp on you, I think it might have made more sense back then. But it's funny what things that we used to do that we just keep doing and what things we used to do that change. Because I think to this day, if you want to start a beehive, the U.S. Postal Service is your mailman for that. Because when we moved to Pennsylvania in 1995, my mom always wanted to start beehives. And when you start a beehive, it's like a couple thousand bees and a queen. And I mean, that's a lot of venomous insects. And the post office deals with it.
Wow.
I mean, like, can you just imagine if you're a mailman and it's like, oh, here, take these 5,000 venomous flying insects. They're yours.
I know they don't pay them enough.
Jesse, you reside in Pennsylvania, is that right? You said?
Right.
What is the first number of your zip code?
1.
Ooh. Jacy?
0.
You got a 0? I am a big hot 4 over here.
Where are you guys again?
Indiana.
Okay.
Connecticut.
And Connecticut is right up by New York. Pennsylvania touches New York, so 0, 1 makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when I grew up in Southern California, I was 9, so that was a neat fact for me to learn.
Yeah, I did not know that.
I also love when people tell you facts that you didn't know that you can instantly check and confirm in your head. It just feels kind of gratifying to be like, I never knew that. And then you like cross-reference it to try to prove that it's wrong in your head. And you're like, that is correct.
Now, before we wrap things up today, guys, we have got to thank the folks because we had a little fun on Facebook and Instagram. We put out a silly poll and we asked for wrong answers only. What do you think the next Nateland topic will be? And we got, thank you, folks, because you did. You commented. You gave us some crazy, silly answers. Jacy, what do you want to pick one out here?
Yeah, Scott Donnelly said gangsta rap, and I thought that would be hilarious. I don't even know what kind of facts they'll throw out, but that would be a good one.
And believe I was chatting with him on Facebook, and I told him I went straight up to, I go back to the image of when Brian wins the lottery, and I see him as a pimp. I saw he's like Snoop Dogg. Yeah, I can't help it.
like
That
the
image
chain on
always
him.
comes back. It always comes back.
Flav clock around his neck.
Flavor
Yeah.
Flav, yeah.
I have to give 50 points to Joel Ward because he probably has the most likely answer of topic that they'll never be, and that is the Shawshank Redemption.
He's never gonna watch that.
Yeah.
He's watching Pure Luck, the 1991 Danny
Yeah.
Glover movie in his
And
spare time.
And he said, this was one of my favorite movies growing up, or this was my favorite movie growing up. And I'm like, he said that like 5 times on this podcast.
I started the conspiracy theory that part of his contract for his new Amazon special was that he had to promote other Amazon rentals. Because when I went,
The Rent.
well, I was like, it's a fine movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I'm like, it's obscure enough that you'd expect it to be free on Amazon or Netflix.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Yes.
on either one of them. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe this is part of Nate's new contract. Yeah, you could have your special here, but now on Nateland every week, you need to
We're
sell
following.
one of the $3.99 rentals.
I definitely looked this week to see if I could find it anywhere free also, and I did not.
Really, I'm not the only one.
Oh, no, I looked. I like a good film.
Did you ladies have similar favorite movies like Pure Luck growing up? That to you, it was like the one that was like, oh, we knew every line type of movies.
The Goonies.
The Goonies was the first one that came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandlot.
Sandlot.
But yeah, Sandlot. Was anyone here a Tommy Boy fan?
Fat guy in a little coat. I mean, I don't have that memorized, but I sure remember that part. Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so many. Actually, it's funny. I actually did rent a 90s movie, Beethoven, last night for my boys because I was like, oh, Beethoven, I remember that movie. And they hated it because there's so much like stuff I don't remember as a kid as far as like the dog napping, the heaviness of there's a bee in here. Speaking of bee.
Oh, that's fun.
Wow.
Just weird stuff.
How old are your boys that didn't like it?
10 and 7. It got too dramatic for them. They also are very sensitive with animals, like with animal stuff. And I didn't think about it. And my 10-year-old was like, I hate this movie. I'm leaving. And he got up and left like an old man.
Well,
I don't know if I've ever watched Beethoven.
Do you remember the bad veterinarian at one point comes and like puts fake blood on his hand?
Yes.
And makes it look like Beethoven's attacking him. That part's scary.
They didn't. I fast forwarded.
See, our kids are 8 and 12 now, and we introduced them to Beethoven about a year or two ago, like the same way you did.
Sorry, there's a bee in here.
The post office is getting its revenge.
In January.
I know.
In Connecticut, ETP is having a heyday with this one. I'm telling you.
You probably have a hive somewhere in your attic, but anyway, so when we introduced ours to Beethoven, they wanted to watch the whole series, and so Beethoven 1 was good, Beethoven 2 was okay, and then it was sort of like Home Alone. Like I think there's like more Home Alones and Beethovens than there are Fast and Furious movies, and they started to get a little bit worse as you go, and the main characters aren't there. But our kids actually really liked them when we went back just a year or two.
Yeah, mine too. Mine liked them, and they didn't care that it wasn't, the original people.
I think that would actually be a fun question to ask.
I'm sorry. He's like attacking me. Oh my gosh. No, I'm not. But he's like huge.
Don't
Oh
swat
my
it.
God. What am I supposed to do?
I am allergic to bees, and that's why I'm swollen up like this.
Oh my
But
Harold's allergic to bees.
He's like right behind
What
me.
about Harold and bees? Harold's allergic to bees.
To the folks out there,
Every kind of bee. Name that movie in the comments, folks.
Hold on one second. Hold on.
While she's doing that, I'm going to read another.
Before we move on from the movies, could we ask the folks what was their who else has like these cult following favorite movies that they know every line of? Because it's sort of funny that how certain movies, weird movies, pop up. Like I think there are some classics like Goonies or Tommy Boy, some of the ones we mentioned. But what are some of the favorite movies ever out there listens to, or what were the favorite ones in your life that you might have known every other lineup? I'd be curious to
That's
hear.
a great question. I'd love to see that in the comments. I would love that, actually. I love a good film. But no, I'm just going to read a couple more of these silly comments from the folks. Larry Marshall says, Panguins, the other white meat. Good stuff. And speaking of which, we didn't get into talking about that. We should mention that because I laughed pretty good when Nate was talking about petting the penguin. Well, he says penguin, but when he was petting the penguin and he was talking about how soft it was, I laughed so good because he says they're so soft. And he says, you shouldn't, but if somebody wanted me to try on a coat, I would. I got a good laugh at it. I told my husband, I said, well, the guy who wants you to try on that coat is the same guy who drove his truck up in our classic Nateland episode because he had a couple penguins to sell you. Same guy.
One thing I love about these guys, I appreciate so much how on Nateland they avoid controversies so everyone can just relax and enjoy it. And even something like I'm watching this as a performer in the back of my mind that when Nate says all that stuff, Jacy is still alive. That's good. When Nate says all that stuff like, oh, well, you shouldn't have a penguin coat. I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, oh, great. If I make a joke about penguin coats, I'm going to offend this whole bunch of people. But he dismantles the argument right there because he makes the joke that he says, but you shouldn't. But I still.
And you shouldn't. Yeah. It was perfectly worded, really, on the fly like that. It was good stuff.
So paranoid right now.
What is
Sorry.
the coolest animal petting experience you ladies have ever had?
Oh, a dolphin.
How did you pet a dolphin?
On our honeymoon, we went to the Caribbean, and we were
how
like,
did you get married to a dolphin?
well,
They have
I
lax
can't
laws in
discuss
Connecticut.
that, or else I'll be in jail. No, yeah, it was really cool. My husband didn't do it. It was one of those things that he felt like it would be a treat for me to do it, and it was very sweet. And I mean, I know that they can hold their own in the ocean, but they're really just so tender and curious, and yeah, they're not really a threat to us. I don't know. It was just awesome.
I don't know my answer. I will say one that I know that I really enjoyed was an elephant.
Yeah.
I enjoy elephants a lot. And it was pretty neat to get to have an up close encounter with elephants.
That's fun.
I had a couple that come top of mind. One of them at a behind the scenes tour, they actually let us pet a rhino. And petting a rhino was as majestic and fun as you can imagine. Now, it's on the other side of a very hefty steel gate, and you have to be careful where your hands are. But they don't let everyone do that. That was a behind the scenes thing. And then something that is more common at a lot of zoos is got to feed giraffes a couple times. And that's not unusual that you go to a zoo, they'll give you some lettuce that you could feed a giraffe. And I would just tell people, if you ever get a chance to do that, it is as fun as it sounds, actually more fun than it even sounds. It's very fun to pet giraffes.
Yeah, for sure. Those big black tongues.
Awesome.
What are the weirdest things that all of you listeners out there, all the,
The folks.
the 3, 4, 5 folks that are listening to this episode, what are the coolest things that you guys
500, 5,000, yeah.
Yeah, millions and millions of you guys. What are the coolest things you have gotten a pet? And if you say something cool like a reptile, I may or may not send you some shed Gila monster skin because this episode we've been getting some Gila monster.
Ooh.
That's really cool.
We just dropped that in an envelope from our P.O. box. Virginia.
I think your post office guy likes you as much as Dusty's likes him at this point.
James is awesome.
Jesse, what do you say we throw in, wrap her up with a few breakfast bites?
Let's do it.
All right, so I only found 2, barbell baits and bric-a-brac.
Bric-a-brac.
I don't know what that means, but yeah, there hasn't been too many bee names lately. People have just been calling him Breakfast O'Brien. But I like to keep it going. I'm Batesville, so we got to keep the bee names going. So if you have a bee name, put it in the comment for Brian.
And speaking of comments, we would love it if you would kindly go on to the bottom of this page here on YouTube or on our Instagram. Leave us a comment. Please like and subscribe. We appreciate you so much, folks. And let's hear it for our reptile expert, Jesse, who joined us this week.
Yay!
Guys, and,
Rosie and Chester. Woo!
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
this is the part of the show where we get to plug our upcoming events.
Yes, tell
Yes.
us what you have coming up this week.
Well, I have a corporate event on Saturday, like Brian.
Is that on your website? You don't get to say it if it's not on your website.
It is on my website, so you can see that that you can't come to it, but it's a private event. But this time of year, we actually have a ton of private events and school events. So I was at a small Mennonite school today, New Haven Mennonite
Nice.
school in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, and kindergarten through high school. These kids were amazing. They sat still the whole time. They carry their chairs and carry their chairs out. Wonderful experience. But if you happen to be in the Pennsylvania area, one of our funnest shows we have coming up here shortly is in March. It's at a place called the Oregon Dairy Restaurant. It's like a restaurant family supermarket. And they do something called warehouse theater, where they take their big warehouse, the back of the store, they clear it out, they roll down rugs, and then the milk crates that all the gallons of milk come in, they set those up all around the warehouse like seats.
That's so
And
fun.
they have family shows there, 2 or 3 family shows every winter when it's too cold to go outside. And then they have a small admission price that includes popcorn, their own chocolate milk that they make there on the farm,
Wow.
of course, coffee. So it's one of
Wow.
those things.
Fun.
Being from where we're at in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the Amish capital of the world, we just
I
have
wanna
all these
go.
great family things.
The folks should go check Jesse out, guys. Why don't we put that information in our description for this video?
Yep, I will send you our event link, which is forgottenfriend.org/events.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up for this week on Folkland. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Thanks everyone for
Bye.
staying tuned.